Hello, everyone. Welcome to another discussion of Vagabond. And today, Murphy Napier and I will be discussing the second bind-up, which includes volumes 4, 5, and 6 in the
Yes.
series. So, Murphy, hello, welcome. How are you?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me back. It's good to be chatting about this.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about the second bind-up and how. But did you have a physical one? Did it? And if so, did it hold up?
No, I switched to digital. I didn't trust
Okay.
myself with physical anymore.
And you didn't want to read it like me, like this.
Right. I
Yeah.
don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a full page spread and it's all, how do you, is that fine for you?
I mean, I guess it's like, what would be worse, doing this or breaking the spine, which gives me physical pain to think about
Breaking the
it.
spine. Break it.
Yeah, I know I should be a little less delicate with these, but oh well, you know.
No, it's fine. You
Uh,
treat your books the way you want to, and I will rip mine to shreds.
yes, yeah, and we're happy to discuss them afterwards.
Yes, exactly.
So what did you think of this one, of the bind up as a whole? General impressions. What did
I
this?
loved it.
You loved it? Okay.
I loved it. Yeah, it was so I feel like we're really digging into the kind of things, or at least beginning to dig into the kinds of things that we're meant to be discussing in this.
Yeah.
Questions about the layers of a human and if those things hinder or help and um pushing parts of yourself down, and then this quest that he's on, even the action. We had a whole volume dedicated to one fight again, but this time I loved it. This time I felt like it was so engaging the whole way through. So I'm these all three of these volumes I enjoyed so much.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. There's a fair bit of psychological exploration going on in here, and I loved some of the flashbacks that were happening here.
Yeah,
And there's
very
just so
briefly.
Yeah, there's an effective, I think, use of not going in chronological order all the time, and
Right.
that was well done. Speaking of which, right from the beginning, I feel like you have some interesting panels here. So I'll just try, without breaking my spine, point these out. So this is
Hmm.
what you see when you first open, and this is a callback to the previous volume,
Hmm.
which ended with the whole business at the Yoshioka school, which got burned
Hmm.
down, and with of course our protagonists kind of getting a bit of a lesson there.
Hmm.
Although he's still getting lessons in there too, but you have these various characters. So you have our protagonist Musashi,
Hmm.
who's obviously he's not in great shape, right? He's the huff always tells you he's at his limits, right?
Right. Yes.
And then you have the leader, at least in name, of the Yoshioka school here, Seijuro, who
Hmm.
is a prodigy, who is just brilliant and talented. He's the one who gave him the cut on his forehead.
Hmm.
His kind of more brutal brother, Denshichiro. And then you have, whose feet are these here? You know, and I think they must be Otsu's feet. But
Possibly. Yeah.
I think so. I'm guessing
'Cause
those are.
that's Matahachi there, right? Or is that still Musashi?
I think yeah. So Matahachi is not pictured here,
Oh, okay.
unless those are his feet. But I don't think so. I think
I
they're
don't think so.
Otsu's. I think they're
Yeah.
Otsu's feet, because she's obviously a very important element. What this is it's a dream sequence.
Mm,
This is Musashi being in a state of delirious kind of he's trying to recover. He's been carried off by Matahachi. He doesn't know
right.
that Matahachi was the one who carried him to safety, and he's having
Right.
these dreams, and
So I guess it
she
must be Otsu because we
yeah,
find out that he was calling out her name in his sleep.
yes, Takuan makes fun of him for that, saying
That's so
Otsu,
funny.
Otsu, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely right. So these are his dreams. And then the next page is sort of the intro page, but I love this too. Again,
Yeah.
indicating that this is their childhood. This is kind of
Right.
a flashback, right? So you have Matahachi trying his best to be brave and looking more scared than brave.
Sweet boy.
And then you have Takezo, or
Hmm.
Musashi, looking pretty intimidating even as a kid. And then you have in the middle, Otsu.
Otsu.
That's a statement, isn't it?
Oh yeah, she's gonna be in the middle for sure. Because we still, even in these volumes, we have Matahachi thinking, I should have gone back to her. I could have had this life with her. And then we have Musashi dreaming about her and admitting his love for her. So there's definitely gonna be, she's gonna be in the middle.
Yeah, yeah, I'm afraid so. And there's another possible complication, another wrinkle here is Akemi, who is Oko's daughter, I think,
Right,
who
right.
seemingly has not forgotten in all these years
Mhm.
Takezo, or now Musashi. So I'm expecting her to come into this somehow or other at some point. But,
Right.
we'll see. How did you like the comedy when Musashi wakes up? And it turns out that he's a bit hard to recognize at first because he's bearded and his hair is long. But there's Takuan,
Yes.
and he's trying to give him some advice as usual, which he's sort of kind of not exactly listening to.
Yeah, Musashi is not the most teachable guy in the world.
No.
We've got some good lessons coming his way, and he responds with, so I should just get stronger then? Every time.
Yeah, that's pretty much his response. But what I love is, even as we were discussing how Takuan was teasing him, guess what he was doing while he was shaving Takuan's head?
Leaving a little face in the background.
I mean,
so funny.
That was a dimension of Musashi that I didn't see coming, that he has a sense of humor.
Right. Yeah, no, totally. We haven't really seen that of him up to this point. We've just seen him being loyal and dedicated to the people he cares about, and seeing him being in conflict, which I think that's part of this initial conversation that we have with the monk and with Musashi is the layers of his humanity, and him being weakened by his love or his distractions, these frivolous things. And I think that's kind of part of it too, is this prankster, jokester side of himself he probably shoves down because he views it as an obstacle of his ultimate goal, which is to become the strongest man.
Exactly. Yeah, which is why he has sort of denied his feelings for Otsu all these years, I suppose.
Right.
What did you think of the introduction of the boy Jotaro, who wants to be Musashi's disciple?
Yeah, I don't know what we're going to do with his character because, obviously he's in the same position that Musashi and Otsu have been in, where they don't have a home, they don't have a family, they don't have a future. And he's desperately trying to cling to Musashi. And I think he kind of views this little boy the same way that he views Otsu, where it's like, I don't need attachments. I don't need something to weigh me down. I just need this goal. And viewing humans that would be attached to him as an obstacle or a weakness. But it is interesting to me how much vulnerability this child has basically on every page we see him on.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think that Musashi sees a bit of himself there too, in this orphan, in Jotaro. And his resistance is exactly what you said. It's, I don't need attachments, but it's also, if you follow me, kid, you're going to become like me, and that might not be the best thing. And so he probably sees a bit of himself in Jotaro, I think, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it is interesting to me that when he finally recognizes or admits that he loves Otsu, he then turns to the boy and says, all right, let's get stronger together. Which is funny because I think what you said is true, that it's don't follow me, you don't want to be like me. But then as soon as he starts recognizing his humanity, he's like, okay, well, maybe you can follow me a little bit, which I think I'm excited to explore that a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And where that ends up in the end is kind of sad too, because of, we'll get to that point, but that's much later.
Yeah.
Where I think the boy is disillusioned a bit with the master he had adopted. But long before we get there, we have this response among the Yoshioka school to their school being burned down. And I thought it was Seijuro's reaction was interesting because he seemed so not invested. And yet, clearly, this is something that's shaken him up, the loss of his school. And then you have Toji, the assassin from the Yoshioka school, who decides he's got to get some revenge, right? So he
Mhm.
goes off in pursuit of Musashi, right?
Right.
So
Even though
that's
it wasn't his fault, he didn't do it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I thought his reaction was curious
Hmm.
because he's not supposed to be very serious about anything. And yet this seems to have hit him somewhere, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it is his entire life, and it's also what has given him notoriety. Without this school, what is he?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Even though he's kind of tried to reject that identity, it's clearly he's been forced to see how central it is to who he is, I suppose. And
Hmm.
then you have Ueda, who is a member of the school as well. Just in a brief scene there, I kind of like this guy. He seems like the nicest among the Yoshioka school, at least.
Uh-huh.
But as I said, Toji is the one, and of course, who goes off in pursuit of Musashi. And then you have Denshichiro, who's trying to go learn some sword technique from the Yagyu school, which is it turns out to be where Otsu is staying with the
Right.
master of the Yagyu school.
Right.
And so that's going to bring everybody, I think, into another conflict, right? That's probably what we're seeing here?
I expect so. It's definitely a slow build, but we have to get everybody together eventually.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. All right, cool.
You're keeping up with these names impeccably.
Oh,
I,
well, I spent time before we started recording going, trying to memorize all the names. So,
good for you. I'm hoping to get the main ones down strongly.
yeah, yeah.
But all
Well,
these people will probably be relevant, so that's good.
I think so. I mean, certainly Toji, the assassin, plays a role in what's to
Yeah,
come.
for
Although,
sure.
again, more of an observer for the most part. Although he does cut the one guy's hands off at the. No, I'm not going to say this one right, but the Hojoin school, the spear
Yeah,
school, whatever we
which
were going to call that.
I think Hojoin is the name of the old man. I think the school's named after
Yeah,
him.
that's his school. So yeah, that's his.
Okay.
I guess would be his surname. Because
Yes.
his given name, his personal name is Inai,
Okay.
I think. But yeah, that
Okay.
school is named for him, I believe. Yeah,
Yeah, well, because he's the master, and that's
yeah,
why we end up talking to Inshun, his who's the secondary and who is the one that's really leading everything at this point.
yeah.
Um, but when we first do meet this old man, I found
Yes,
it so interesting the way Musashi. Yeah, that's the right
yes.
one.
You got it.
Okay. Sorry. Matahachi and Musashi. I easily scrambled them in my mind. Musashi, the way he instantly envisions this old man, you know, turning his hoe on him and
Yeah,
beating, yeah, and I thought that was for real when I read it, and then I realized that that was just his mind's eye, and
yeah,
that he confronted him and said, "This is your bloodlust." And all these battles that you've been in your whole life, that's your bloodlust. Like, you are the causer, the causation of this. They weren't your enemies
right.
until and I find that very fascinating because we talked about this in our last video too, that a lot of times it feels like he's on the defense, but we're also only getting fractions of these scenes. So it's
Yeah,
hard to really tell. And that makes me want to, I don't know, it makes me want to re-examine that we've seen where it's like, okay, that does make sense what I know about him, that he would be always viewing everything as aggression and therefore
yeah.
responding with this intense aggression that we've seen on display.
So you're reading that as Musashi's projection, essentially. Is that, am I understanding you right there? That he's projecting his own
I
violence
guess
onto this old man?
um well, so that's the vision that he had where he saw the old man harming
With
him.
the
Yeah,
hoe, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think that was him assuming violence is to come and going on the defense. And then
Uh-huh.
the old man recognized that in him and said, you assume violence in others and you make enemies
Yeah,
of the people around you, which makes me look back at every instance we've seen before and think, oh, okay, so he's seeing potentially innocent interactions or potentially defensive, and he's going straight towards aggression.
right.
So, like, he's the one that's causing so much violence in his life. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah. It sort of follows him around. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So true. Yeah, a bit like Karsa and House of Chains, I think. Yeah,
Yeah. A
yeah.
lot like Carson.
Yeah. So now I have to ask you, because I immediately thought, and I'm of a certain generation. I grew up, in the 70s, and the first film I remember seeing is Star Wars in
Okay.
1977. Strong Yoda nods, I thought, with Master Ine of the Hojin school. I thought because he has the whole like thing where he'll talk a little bit like Yoda, and also there was a scene where he's actually sitting on Musashi's back like Yoda
Right.
was for Luke Skywalker.
That's interesting.
Did you pick up that, or is that just me?
Is it, would you stop being my friend if I told you I've never seen Star Wars?
Ah!
Don't tell the internet. This is just between us.
Okay. Oh no.
Yeah, I know. I'm not much of a movie person, and so
Uh-huh.
I'm worried that if I watch it, then I won't have the nostalgia, so I won't be able to love it like everyone else does.
There's a certain amount of, you have to be a little forgiving of the special effects and
Sure.
yeah. I mean, it's actually pretty good for the time period, but yeah,
Right.
it's not exactly up to modern
Right.
standards when it comes
Sure.
to the special effects. But the storytelling is brilliant, I think.
Okay. I
Uh,
mean, my husband's a big fan, so
oh,
I'm sure it's good.
okay. So there's hope. Yeah.
There's hope.
No, that's perfectly fine. We're still friends. Uh,
Okay, good.
yeah.
But yes, he does have that wise mentor. Like you
Yes.
can tell you can tell he's seen the world. He's seen
Yeah.
things, and from that comes his counsel of knowing. And he does have really interesting discussions with Musashi about, what makes a true fighter and being
Yeah.
able to see the deficits in Musashi as well as in Inshun.
Yeah.
Um, which I'm excited to dig more into that in future volumes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's definitely an archetype,
Yeah.
we meet a lot of archetypes in here, which I'm totally here for. I love it. So we do get to this school, which I'm not pronouncing correctly, the Spear School of the monks,
Right.
the
Right.
Hojoin, however you say that, Hojoin, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Hozoin, anyway.
Yeah.
And we get there, and we do have a pretty intense fight scene that is really takes up a lot of space with a lot of psychological insights into the
It's
characters.
all of volume 5. The entire
Yeah.
volume is that fight between Musashi and Inshun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was so good. It wasn't
Yeah.
like somebody holding their staff up in the air for 5 minutes and thinking about it. It was
Yeah.
like it moved, and I was on the edge of my seat, and it didn't even finish at the end of volume 5. And I was
No.
like, I gotta know what'll happen next. It was
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And of course, Toji from the Yoshioka school, the
Mhm.
assassin, gets involved as well. Although he steps back to make
Yeah. Yeah,
the
he lets
real,
them.
yeah. So we get the real scene is between Musashi and Inshun.
Mhm.
But you do have Toji's sort of, and he actually ends up leaving.
He does, yeah.
Curiously, he just sort of, I think, why do you suppose he leaves? Why does Toji ultimately just say, "All right, I'm out"?
I think I don't know. He's an anomaly to me. I think it's because he recognized that the fight wasn't full force for Inshun. Um,
Ah, okay.
let's see if I wrote that down. Yeah. Okay, so he says Musashi's attacks of rage and anger clearly reflect his fear and unease. There's
Yeah,
neither anger nor hatred in Inshun's attacks. In
yeah,
fact, they almost seem friendly. It's almost as if Inshun is embracing his opponent for offering such a great challenge. So I
yeah.
don't know if he was disgusted by the fact that it wasn't a true fight, or if
Mm.
he just felt like he didn't need to be there because it was more of sport for Inshun. I don't know why, but I think it's connected to the fact that he could identify that it wasn't Inshun wasn't he could have easily taken Musashi down if he felt like it, but instead he was playing.
Yeah, yeah. I think he definitely perceived something there that Musashi was completely unaware of. Like he's just kind
Yeah.
of gone in full force, brute strength, trying to overwhelm his opponent, who's
Hmm.
just got way too much skill for him, and that's a really tough epiphany, I think, that he goes through, getting really the crap beaten out of him. And
He
yet,
did.
as you said, I think Inshun sees this fire, this spark, this determination, and he admires it.
Hmm.
He feels a sense of connection to Musashi, even as he's beating the pants off of him, right?
Yes. Yeah, there's definitely especially after this fight in volume 6, when at the end of volume 6, when he realizes where Musashi is, and you get that look on his face, and he's like, for anyone listening that is a Hunter x Hunter fan, he reminds me a lot of a character called Hisoka, who
Oh,
is the thrill of the fight is so exciting and intense that it's almost sexual to, not almost, it is to him, where he's just
wow.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, his bloodlust is so engrossing that he'll find an opponent that could maybe kill him, and then he'll just play with them
Huh.
until they'll either overpower him or he'll overpower them, but he'll make it go as long as he can, because that's like some thrill that he gets. And I get
Yeah.
a similar vibe from Inshun, maybe not as twisted, but similar.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, he's such a prodigy that I
Yeah.
think he spent a lot of his life being a bit bored,
Yes,
And I think he has a
absolutely.
lot in common with, from the Yoshioka school, the character Seijuro, the older brother, who is
Yes.
nominally the master of this, the second generation master of the school. But he's disengaged, and he goes to the pleasure quarters, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So they're not identical, but I feel like they're both prodigies who are somewhat bored by their existence, and in their encounter with Musashi, see something they don't have. That
Yeah.
some kind of spark is there, and they kind of are mesmerized by that, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That intensity, that giving everything. I think there was a line where they said that Musashi was fighting as if his very life was behind every single
Mm.
blow. Yeah, and I
Mhm.
think Inshun, seeing somebody giving their all and not just fighting for sport, but fighting for their life, there was something in that sparked an excitement in him.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was
Did you?
also interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead, please.
It was also interesting to see how Musashi, when he realized how outmatched he was, that
Uh-huh.
his blows were weak, that he was easily being overpowered, that he was a lesser fighter because his fear was so overpowering that
Yes.
he just couldn't work up his normal amount of strength, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, and then he hit himself on the head. And that's sort of he's kind of like a berserker a bit, right? Isn't he? I mean,
Hmm.
he's got to just let it all out in order to be at his best. So
Yeah, which I think kind of reinforces his philosophy of his human side. The human layers of him are a deficit. So this
Mhm.
fear caused weakness in him, and having to knock that out of himself made him a better fighter. So
Yeah.
he's not going to learn this lesson quickly, I think, because he's kind of trained himself to beat down the humanity in himself.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if he'll ever be a very, highly skilled fighter in terms of finesse and that sort of thing.
Right.
Because, it's a bit like, like I play tennis, and I never took real lessons or anything like that. So my
Hmm.
form is terrible. It's just an actual tennis pro would look at my forehand and say, ugh. But I go out there with all the enthusiasm in the world, and I'm not a terrible player. I just, I have to run around, and I don't have beautiful form. I feel like he's going to be like that as a fighter. He's always
Yeah.
going to have this terrible form, but he's got
Mm.
all this just verve, and he's got this energy. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's going to get trained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, actually, I think that's a really good observation, because they do have a conversation where Inshun asks him, "Who trained you?" And he says, "No one. I trained myself." And he's like, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
can tell you're like a wild animal."
Yeah.
And constantly changing your strategy. I can't predict, which I think is part of the fun for Inshun, is all his formal training isn't helpful to him against such a wild beast. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
which I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I kind of love that. I don't necessarily want him to get a training montage, which
Yeah.
he very well may get, but I like that he's a bit of a wild beast and that he's a bit
Yeah.
unteachable. And I want to see him shaped some, but I kind of want to keep
Yeah.
this wildness about him too.
Because that's his true strength, I think. Yeah.
It's a big part of what makes him unpredictable for
Right.
people who have been formally trained.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Which is, it's pretty cool. Did you feel like, I mentioned earlier the kind of parallel between Seijuro from the Yoshioka school
Mhm.
and Inshun from the Hojoin school? I also thought there was an interesting, a bit of a parallel with the brute from the Yoshioka school, the younger brother Denshi Chiro,
Right.
and the guy Aegon. He's not a brother to Inshun, but he's there, right? He's the one who says, "You have had the privilege of being thrashed by Aegon of the
Right.
Hojun school." You remember him? So
Barely.
yeah, I mean, he's not as important, but
No,
he's
you're doing such a good job keeping track of everyone, and I'm just like, oh, keep the
yeah,
main thread.
yeah.
No,
So
go
he's,
ahead.
but they had their hulking brute at that
Yes.
school as well, and then of
Yes.
course, a similar event. You have our main character Musashi going to the Yoshioka school,
Right.
finding his measure there,
Hmm.
beating somebody or at least tying somebody significant, and then doing the similar thing at the Hojon school where he actually beats, I think it is Aegon, because he ends up smashing him in the, or punching him. He
Punching
punches him,
him. He punched him.
punches
Yeah.
him, and later he
I think I
headbutts
have that image.
Inshun. Later he headbutts Inshun.
Right.
So he does get, I mean, they're all shocked that he could even get a blow in, because that's pretty much the only blow he gets against Inshun, I think. Yeah, okay. I think that's Aegon that he manages
Oh
to
man, that
punch.
hurts.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
hurts to look at. But it's also really good measuring stick to see this brute
yeah,
that it's shocking that Musashi can get such a clean hit on, and then he can't get a single hit on Inshun for a
right,
long time.
yeah,
Um, but also speaking back to his wild nature, he has an instinct about him that even though Inshun should have killed him a dozen times, he keeps dodging just enough that
yeah,
it's not a death blow, but he's still being injured each time.
yeah.
And I think that that wild nature about him is what causes him to be able to have that's so impressive.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that he's standing up is just sheer will, and that's why I think
Yes.
Inshun is in such awe of him. It's like, dude, you shouldn't be even able to stand, let alone try to put up a fight. And I mean, he does go from attack, attack, attack to defense, defense, defense to finally getting pretty much thrashed. But yeah,
Yes. He does. And I think Inshun probably didn't want to kill him.
yeah,
Where he wanted to play with him and he wanted him to go get stronger and then play with him some more. And
yeah,
him realizing, wow, you're not giving up. I'm actually gonna have to kill you, aren't I? And
yeah,
like, I don't think he wanted that. But it's also really interesting whenever Musashi does get a hit in on Inshun, and he's like, all right, I got it. And he's super excited and he goes in for a hit, and then Inshun just easily jumps over the staff and kicks him in the face. And it's like, it even shows that even when Musashi is like, this is it, this is my moment, it
yeah,
still just seems so easy for Inshun.
yeah. I mean, Musashi's definitely coming into this still a very naive character. And he's got, clearly, if he survives, a lot to learn.
Hmm.
So anything else you want to say about the whole volume 5 and the
I
fight?
do.
Yeah.
I think this is in volume 5. My favorite part about the entire fight is when it's a two-part thing. When somebody's like, Inshun, look out, he has sand in his hand. And Inshun knew it. And he was like, no, I want to see what he would do with it. And so Musashi just goes, my hands were sweaty. And he just drops it on the staff and, treats it right. But then, and in the moment, it's like, okay, was he gonna throw it? Is he just using that as a cover? And then later he uses the same trick
He
and he
does
does end
throw
up
it
throwing it.
later. Yeah.
I thought that
Yeah.
was so fun.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was great. That was a great element in there because, and of course, everyone's like, "Oh, you're fighting dirty," and blah blah blah. But I think it's just part of the wildness of his approach and his desperation
Well,
too.
desperate. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. He knows that he's deeply outmatched, and the only way for him to survive this is through dirty tactics.
Yeah,
But
and ultimately, we don't get it except in flashback. He runs. He
he
runs away.
does. He
Yeah,
runs. Who would have guessed that would be the conclusion to this fight?
yeah. Which makes, of course, little Jotaro disillusioned and says, "I can't follow you anymore because you ran away from a fight." Right?
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that because I
Yeah,
don't know what to do with that kid because
yeah,
he's like, doesn't have a family, doesn't have a home, doesn't have anything. Even what he does have is like trying to push him away. So he begs and begs and begs to be Musashi's apprentice.
Yeah.
only for him to cry all through the fight. And then whenever Musashi survives, the kid's pissed. He's like, well, no, thank you. I'm not interested in a quitter. And it's like, kid, you're weak. You're the weak one. Why are you down? And I understand that he probably wanted Musashi to teach him to be strong. And then he saw weakness in Musashi. So he's like, never mind, you're not my guy. But who are you going to? What's your plan, kid? What's your next step if you're abandoning this guy who took you in?
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's pretty illogical, emotionally based decision on his part. But I think it has a lot to do with this ideal of masculinity in this kind of warrior culture, where it's more important to die with honor than to survive. If you have to survive by running away, you're showing your cowardice. So it's
That's
like
a good point.
extreme devotion to the warrior ideal, I guess. And Musashi falls short. He's human. He's flawed. Guess what? These ideals are really beyond most, as in like 99.9% of people are not going to, in that moment, are you going to, if you can get away, are you going to run away, or are you going to just die for the sake of looking good, And I think that it's understandable that part of him wants to survive,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's a very good point, that probably a lot of what we're doing in this series is confronting those very classic cultural ideas of, honor being the only thing. And if you mess up, then you commit Sengetsu. What's it called?
Oh yeah, when you kill yourself.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like that kind of ideal that was historically very prevalent in the culture, kind of confronting those and confronting that that mentality, which is what he did was dishonorable for a martial artist.
Yeah. That is actually alluded to in the first bind up as well. The one police guy who's failed to get Musashi.
Yeah, right.
Takuen, I think, is the one who says to him, "You should just do, because you're an embarrassment, buddy."
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think 100% right. I think that's what we're going to be exploring more and more in here, and I think that exploration also continues in volume 6 with where we follow the adventures of Matahachi. We finally get to see what he's been up to during this time, and he's not really been, I guess, coming away so great for the most part, although at the end he does finally, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way, live up to the masculine ideal. He gets himself to kill the one guy who had hoodwinked.
I mean, I guess so, but it's through lying and trickery and all the same old things.
Pretending to be someone he's not. I mean, he has a history again. Yeah.
Actually, Matahachi is probably my favorite character at the moment.
Yeah.
Just because I find him so fascinating.
Yeah.
And I love getting these little check-ins with him. And each time his character is so consistent, where even as a child, but then also into adulthood, how he is constantly wanting to be so much more than he is, and committing himself and promising himself, this is who I'm going to be. I'm going to return this certificate to the parents, and wanting to be a noble guy, only to immediately, as soon as conflict approaches, he lies, he manipulates, he finds a way to be someone else, someone that he doesn't want to be. As well as he's very led by passions and very led by things that present themselves. Like we see this when Takezo is fighting and calling out his name and he's having sex in the bushes. And then we see this where people are saying, protect us, help us. And he falls into bed with the first woman that'll have him. He's very led by his passions as opposed to by his morals and beliefs and standards.
Yep. Well said. And I find it so interesting too, that during this encounter with the vermin, the guy who hoodwinks him and takes his money without ever even introducing him to the local militia or whatever it was he was trying to get involved in. During that encounter, he shows his cowardice, but there's a moment where he kind of has this flashback to when he was a
Right.
kid with
Yes.
Takezo slash Musashi, and
And
he
Otsu.
almost beats him at one point, and he's kind of remembering this. And when he finally does work up the courage to kill this thief, who does he
Hmm.
see? It's his friend
It's
Takezo.
Takezo, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like suddenly, wow, this is pretty complex, this relationship
Oh
between
yeah.
Matahachi and Takezo or Musashi, because he worships him. You know, he's
Oh, he
the
wants to be him.
wants to be him, but
Yeah.
it's Takezo that he sees when he finally decides, I'm gonna kill this guy, right?
Mm, yeah, I agree. It's a lot of almost like hero. I want to be like you. I want to embody what you embody, but it's also this jealousy and this I want to
Yeah,
overpower you. I want to I want to be, I want to surpass you. Um
exactly.
yeah, and I think too, it's also a commentary, it's further commentary on fear, which we've already had up to this point, but it was in him remembering, you know what, I used to be strong. I used to be able to nearly overpower Takezo. And that remembrance is what gave him the confidence to be able to overpower the man in front of him.
Yeah. So it's interesting how you have these parallels between the two young friends.
Yeah.
You have Musashi, who's appeared always to be the brave one, but who runs away at the end of his fight. And then you have Matahachi, who's always been the coward, who kills his opponent in
Good
that,
observation.
right?
You're right. Yeah, we have their parallels of their internal struggles, but then we have that very physical how they end up confronting their opponents. I didn't catch on to that. That's very good.
Yeah, yeah. And then of course Matahachi keeps up his pretense of being someone he's not, and he you see a repeated pattern when
Oh yeah,
he sleeps with the woman that he's staying with.
right.
There's that just a brief scene, but you get the sense that, oh, here's Oko all over again. You know,
Oh
he's
yeah.
very much stuck in his patterns, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he has these ideals for himself. This is who I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to do. And then the moment something else presents itself to him, he just falls into those passions and he falls back into these patterns that leave him stuck. So I'm excited to see where we land with him at the end of this and or in the next section that we're going to talk about. I'm excited to see
Yeah.
where his story is now. Is it going to be another time jump where he's now stuck with a woman that he doesn't care about and
Mhm.
isn't trying to get out of it? Or you know what I mean? Like where do we go with him? He's such a
Yeah.
fascinating character.
Totally. Yeah. I have a feeling we know where we're going to go with Inshun and Musashi, though, because at the end here, we have the two of them both very much looking forward to their next encounter, right? They're,
Oh yeah, it's on. What
yeah.
was it? He's coming was what we ended on. Oh
Yeah.
man. Yeah,
Yep.
let's do it. Let's go.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love too, right before that is when we see Musashi giving his everything, training to overpower him, to take him down. And then we cut to Inshun, who's just hanging upside down, bored, and it really shows the different state of mind and different state of skills as well. But before we're at the ending now, but before we wrap up, I do want to also take note again of our Yoda character.
Yes.
I think he's so funny because he recognizes Musashi's stubbornness to to be the strongest and to not learn about his own humanity, which he asked Musashi, teach him about fear. And I don't think he's asking Musashi, make him afraid of you. I think he's asking him something very different. And Musashi just doesn't get it. And so the way he handles Musashi's stupidity, like his stubbornness, is to tell him, go sit under a waterfall. That'll get your humanity out of you.
Yes. Yes.
And so he's
Yeah.
trying to meditate under the waterfall. And then the old man just knocks him on the head
Yeah.
and tells him, you idiot, you could have died. This could have killed you. And he's trying to knock into his head, your single focused obsession is going to get you killed. This is not the way. And Musashi's response to that is to go sit under the waterfall some more. Like he just doesn't get it.
Yeah. You have to admire his stubbornness sometimes, I
Do
guess.
you know? Do you have to admire it?
Persistence. I don't know. Yeah.
He's a determined guy, but he's just so unteachable at this point in the story, where it's like he's beating you over the head with the fact that your persistence is going to get you killed and this isn't the way. And
Right.
his response is to persist.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. That is 100%. Yeah. So brilliant. Any other observations? I think we did a pretty good job of
No, I think we got it.
this bind up.
Um,
Yeah. This is exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just really excited to see Otsu again. I'm just really excited to see
Same.
where her story leads, because I feel like I have a really clear vision now of both Matahachi and Musashi, but I still just don't know about Otsu.
I absolutely agree. I think we need some more Otsu. I hope we'll see more of her in the next volume, and things seem to be heading toward the Yagyu school.
Yeah.
Where you have this this funny master there who when he's about to lose the game, flips the board up, and he, as Otsu observes, he's like a child, right? So we have another
Right.
eccentric master / mentor figure to meet, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited to see their perspectives converge. I think the only concern I have, and it's not a great concern, is with this triangle that he set up between Matahachi, Musashi, and Otsu, and then adding onto it Oko's daughter.
Akemi.
It's
Yeah.
Akemi. It's a lot of, I mean, I don't care about romance anyway
No.
in my literature, but
No.
like it's a lot of angst and drama
Yeah.
that he could tap into, or he could kind of sidestep and do something more interesting with. But the obvious angle is, let's revel in some angst. And I just really hope that that's not where our focus is going to lie.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to see, like you, especially Otsu, but maybe even Akemi as well, really get developed as characters and not just be props for a love
Sure.
triangle, you know.
Sure. Or square, or whatever it is.
Yeah, or square, whatever it ends up being.
Whatever it's. I don't want Akemi and Matahachi, and no, Musashi. I don't want Akemi and Musashi to end
Yeah,
up, because it's weird. You know, he lived with her for a little bit. She was a little girl.
she's a little girl. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it feels, and I know historic, like there were different standards back then, but it feels weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And she seems to have hero worshipped him though for some reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think Musashi's love for Otsu is pretty intense at this point. I don't really see him shifting, at least not quickly.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like a shifting kind of person. So
No, he sure doesn't. He sure doesn't.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Murphy. This was awesome. I love talking with you about manga. And our next discussion will be on the third bind up, which will be volumes 7, 8, 9.
Yes.
And that will be on Murphy's second channel, Murphy Napier Reviews. And I am so looking forward to that. And yeah. So thank you, everybody, for checking out this discussion. And we'll see you in the next one.
All right. See you.